Good evening. Welcome to tonight's webinar. Up next is our host, Dan Wilkie. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Ruth. Well, I want to welcome everybody back who have joined us for one of our first three webinars. This is our four, and I think a series of 7 webinars or 8 webinars, I can't remember. And we have been focusing on the content in the last several webinars. So we're going to do things a little bit differently tonight. Tonight, we're actually going to focus on the math exploration, the internal assessment that IB mathematics students have to write. Now, we're going to try to give you some tips and tricks and some feedback on the first round of grading that went with the IA. And we're here to answer your questions and just share. And I know that we have a lot of IB teachers who are listening and might have answers to questions that pop up. So please feel free to help one another out and answer questions that I can't get to. But having said all that wonderfulness, my name is Dan Wilkie. I am an IB math teacher, and I teach at Christ Church Episcopal School in Greenville, South Carolina. I've been teaching IB now. This is my 18th year for teaching IB. Right now, I currently teach IB analysis and approaches, the standard level. And then I am also an IB moderator for the internal assessment for the math exploration. I've been doing that now for about 5 or 6 years. And then I'm also a paper 1 examiner for applications and interpretations. And I've been doing that for about 8 years now. Well, I was a studies paper 1 before, but now applications and interpretations. So I got a lot of, knowledge on the subject, but I don't know everything. So I'm just going to share with you my personal information and what I've encountered over the last few years, just to kind of give you some help along the way. So why don't we go ahead and just jump right in, and I'll get my slideshow going. All right, so let's see if I can I take control of this, Ruth, if that's okay? Thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen. So let's do that. So I'm now sharing my screen. So let's get up my PowerPoint. So basically, this webinar that we're doing, we're focusing everything we can on the math exploration. So the agenda for tonight basically is, welcome, introductions. So we just did that. Very excited to see the numbers that we have here tonight. But the first thing we're going to get into is what we learned from the May 2021 grading session. As many of you know who went through this last year, COVID hurt us. Normally, during a normal year, we would just do a sample of your class to grade. So if you have a class of 40, you would do X number of papers, you would sample that, send it to us. And I say us, and I mean IB. I'm one of the moderators who get to see how you did with your grading. So my job is to grade what you have graded and give my opinion on it. Hopefully it's the same opinion. That's what we try to do. If you did not realize that, we are trying to, see what you graded and how you graded and kind of agree with you as much as we can. So our goal is not to find out where you went wrong. It's really to try to agree with you. And so this was a first time for many people in the math exploration, especially those applications and interpretations teacher. They were not used to doing a math exploration. They were used to doing the math studies project. So it was quite interesting first go round. So I'll share some of the feedback that we got for that. And then we'll talk about some tips for a well-structured IA. I've been working on, with IB, a 6-part video series with some documents that can help you through the process. And I'll give you just a little outline of that, which, thankfully now I think you can go to my IB and look under the digital content and see it. I think it's there. I'll have to double check. Then we're going to get into how TI can help, because again, we want to help IB teachers, but we're also discussing how TI can help IB teachers. So we're going to look into that. Then I'll just quickly show you there's some other options out there if TI is not readily available for you, and then we'll open up to questions at the end. All right, so let's just jump right in. All right, first thing is, what did we learn from the May 2021 grading session? Well, it was a struggle to grade all the papers. I just have to be honest, because normally we're getting about 20 to 30% of what we had to grade. We had to grade every single paper. And honestly, there just were not enough graders for that type of commitment. So there were a lot of people that were brought into IB that they were first-time graders. And honestly, they struggled with the process of being able to grade. So if you did not know this, we go through a multi-step process to be qualified to grade. So you first, when you're selected to be a grader, you first have to go through some practice papers. And that's just to warm you up, to kind of get in the flow of how to grade. And honestly, you can grade it one way, but then you'll look at the marks and just kind of see how you did in comparison and then adjust accordingly. So then once you get past the practice papers, you go on into the qualification papers. So you do one round of qualifications, and if you do well enough on those 5 papers, you're good. You go and you go and grade your as many as you can. So I graded about 105 papers in May, in the April-May timeframe. And then if for some reason you did not pass that qualification, you actually get a second chance. So you get a second qualification, and then go through another 5 papers and hopefully, keep our fingers crossed, that you pass. And unfortunately, if you don't pass the second, IB will not ask you to grade for that session. And it happens, it happens to the best of us. And sometimes you do really well and agree with how the definitive marks are, and sometimes it doesn't. So, and that was the struggle. We had a lot of first timers. In my team, I had a team of, I think to start with, 12 teachers, and only, I think, 7 or 8 of them passed the qualification stage. So, you just hope to be better next time, hope IB is in need next time, and you go from there. And just to let people know, since we're still in the time of COVID and there was still uncertainty with the schools that participated, who are in school full time, who are maybe, digital, who are split between the two. This year we're also grading every single IA. So we're not doing a sample yet. Every IA is going to be graded. So all the IAs in your class have to be sent off to be, regraded, just to kind of see a fairness level for all. Anyways, now just kind of going down to, the difference between the new courses. With respect to the analysis and approaches courses, those were usually formed from the teachers who taught Math SL or Math HL. And they have been doing the math exploration for a while. So there wasn't too much change or difficulty with them for those courses. But for the applications and interpretations course, there was a struggle there. There were many students and teachers who still erred on the side of writing a math studies paper, which sometimes they were equivalent, but a lot of the times they weren't. And it was tough to give them those full marks or high marks with the former type of IA grading scale compared to the newer type. So that was really a bit of a struggle for the applications and interpretations, getting used to the math exploration. They were still a majority of statistics papers, which is fine, okay? I don't want to say anything against a statistics paper, but you have to dig a little deeper. When you were writing a statistics paper, Unfortunately, you had a checklist. You made sure that you explained what you were going to do. You were very descriptive. You showed how you collected the data, you analyzed it, and then you summed it up. So basically, there was a structure to that. Whereas now in the math exploration, you have to dig deeper. You have to ask those deeper, further questions. And we didn't see a lot of that, kind of going into the grading. So that's something we'll talk about a little bit later as one of the things to really highlight and go forward on. So one thing that I noticed when I was grading the papers, and it was a little frustrating at times, was the sheer length of some of the papers, because unfortunately, IB recommends anywhere from 12 to 20 pages for the math exploration. Now, if you come in a little bit short of that, a little bit more than that, that's okay. But what threw me off is when you had 30 to 40 page papers. What are you saying in a 40-page paper that you can't say in a 20-page paper? Now, I know some of that is data and tables and stuff like that, but when you are basically dealing with a situation that is when you're trying to stay focused in a paper, when it's that long, when it's 30 to 40 pages, it loses focus. And basically, when I get to the criterion highlights, okay, in part A, flow and focus is really important. So when you're dealing with that length of a paper, especially a math paper, I hate to say, you want to be concise. You want to be to the point, very descriptive, and not lose focus, not go on tangents, not do extenuating tables and data that just kind of go on forever. So that has to, kind of be in the forefront for you. So in criterion A, flow and focus is the key. All right. In criterion B, just how you communicate the math has to be super, super clear. And it's very important to have more than just you and the teacher read that paper, because you may understand it, the teacher may understand it, but if you hand it to a friend or a peer or your mother or father, will they understand it? And that's what you have to think of. So you need to be, really, really clear on all of your math communication and what you're trying to convey with that. Criterion C, when we're talking about engagement, it's great to show a personal connection right off in the start of the paper. So hopefully that is always part of you're connected personally. So make sure you share that with your students, that you got to see that personal connection. But then it has to go beyond that. Yes, you have that personal connection, but how can you be engaged throughout the process? Are you just doing the bare minimum? Okay, when you're just doing the bare minimum to check off a box, that's really not being fully engaged. What we're looking for is taking a result and then asking further questions of why did it happen this way? How did, the environment, the outside world, how can the global, or the international society or community, how did that affect your results? Kind of taking it further. How can you adjust things to make things go in a different direction, or, giving those explanations or showing that you're engaged throughout the process. That is key to showing engagement, not just saying that, oh, I like to, play basketball, so I'm going to do a basketball paper. That, yeah, shows a connection to it, but is it showing engagement? In criterion D, this one is one of my favorites because when I grade IAs and I give feedback of, they didn't dig deep enough. They didn't, they were just very superficial with the reflections. I always get comments from teachers, well, what do you mean they didn't dig deep enough? Or what does it mean, just superficial reflection? So a superficial reflection is when you just basically reiterate what you just found out from the math analysis. So your reflection is just saying what you did, saying the results. You're not really, thinking about what do those results mean, or how did we end up here, or how is it different than what we thought it was going to be? What could we do in the future with this to make things happen in a certain way? So that's when we're going beyond the superficial. So you want to go, deeper, further with those results and talk about that. Um, and then criterion E, I love this question. How much math is enough? And this is where the former studies teachers and students struggled with the paper is, they always thought they had to do 8 to 10 to 12 types of math processes, but that's where you lose focus. That's where it's not concise. So the question is, how much math is enough? You can do an excellent math exploration if you just focus on 2 to 3 math processes and dig deep with those and kind of just go beyond the surface of finding, what those, because when you do 10 math processes, you're just skimming the surface on all 10 of those. But if you really pick 2 or 3 good ones, maybe even up to 4 or 5, and really focus your attention on those math, why those are important, why those make it a good paper, then that is enough. That is enough math. You don't have to do all these math processes. It's just, and again, it takes away from the conciseness and the flow of the paper. So just keep that in mind when you're going through this process with the students. So what about, what are some tips for a well-structured IA, including, like I said, I did a little 6-part video series for IB. They asked me if you can do short videos, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes for, how to develop a good topic and really be involved in it. So I put together, there are PowerPoints with the videos, and then there are also 1 to 2 documents with each videos that either you can use as a teacher or you can give as a student. And all you have to do is log into your My IB account and then go under digital content. I think it's either there now or it's going to be there this month, which I think is really exciting. I was glad to be a part of it. Hopefully, hopefully you like what I did. But just some of the highlights from it. The first video is the longest out of all of them, and it just goes into some specifics about what is a math exploration IA. What does it mean to the student? What are they trying to accomplish with it? And it's basically where you're trying to get away from just the normal examination assessment where you're sitting down answering questions. A math exploration, this internal assessment is supposed to be sustained over many weeks, many months so the students have to really think about, figure out a topic that they're passionate about. What can they do to really explore something that, might help their school or help their society, their community, or their world, try to make some connections to other things than just mathematics. And so it just, like I said, gets away from just sitting down and writing an answer to a question. And then it also involves, bringing together your peers. And that's why the second bullet point here, which is brainstorming your way to a good topic, it's collaborative. So this initial stage, the paper, yes, is the student's individual work, but when you're coming up with an idea, there should be collaboration there. There should be, a brainstorming session and this is what I do in my class. And what I explain in the videos is, I have a small class. There's only 7 in my IB class. We're a smaller school. So our IB classrooms range from the lowest is my class of 7 all the way up to, like 12 or 15 for the other classes. So in my school, I have the ability just to sit in a circle and we start with a word. All right. And this could be found under again, my IB and the teacher support materials. You just start with a word and then you come up with subtopics of that word and you do what's called a mind map. And you just, from that one word and then the subtopics, then from the subtopics, you kind of create different paper exploration topics. And then you bounce pros and cons off of one another. And it's a really effective tool to kind of narrow things down and get students to talk things out. And I had several students come up to me afterward and said, thank you for doing this, because some other IB teachers are just saying, go ahead, go do what you're going to do, and don't really give them guidance. And to have students sit and talk about things was really effective. and the students really benefit from it. So we did one whole class. Everybody bounced ideas off of one another, and they came away with 2 to 3 topics that they can go home and really think about. All right. And then they came back to me, and we had these little one-on-one meetings of, you know, here are your topic ideas. And they gave me 2 or 3. And then we just sat and talked more about the pros and cons of each until we came up with, okay, this is the topic that we're doing. And that was step 1 of the process, And so um, once they went and then they kind of knew their topic, then we started, actually we had the next step in our process was they had to come up with an opening paragraph, had a list of at least 5 sources that they were going to use for the paper, and then give me an outline and answer some kind of general questions about it. And that was actually due at about 3 weeks ago. And then in 2 weeks, their rough draft is due. So they've been now working on their rough draft. Now I give them a few days in class to kind of come in and ask questions and stuff like that. But it's a really nice process. And the next part we have here, it says the parts of the IA and how they flow together. One of the toughest things that students find, and I hate to say this, some teachers find, is, it's easy to chunk a paper together in bullet points of, I'm supposed to do my opening, and here's what I'm supposed to talk about. Here's my math I'm going to use. Here's my data I'm going to collect. Here's the analysis. Here's the conclusion, but with a math exploration, we're trying to transform those bullet points into almost an essay where it flows together, and how, the opening leads into the data collection if they're doing statistics, how that leads into the analysis, how that leads into reflection and conclusion, and just kind of getting that down, and you are allowed to give examples for students in class. And I know I've heard from some teachers that their IB coordinators say that they're not allowed to let the examples on the MyIB website be seen by students, which I think is counterintuitive. Why would IB put those out there if only teachers are allowed to see them? What I do is I keep a stack of them in my classroom and let students look at them from time to time, just to kind of see how other students have written them and how things flow together and how they were graded. And that's kind of really, really important. Which brings me up to kind of an important piece to, how things flow together. I mentioned it earlier that you and the student should not be the only ones reading this paper. Just yesterday in my class, I told my students, I said, when you are at a point where you have a fleshed out paper, and it doesn't have to be the final draft, but it could be a rough draft, take someone from another IB math class, since we're all doing explorations, hand it to them, say, can you read this and tell me, do you understand it? Does it flow nice together? Do you have any questions? Do you have any comments? Because yes, as IB teachers, we're allowed to do that once, but students can do that with one another as many times as they want. I had other teachers say that, they use their mothers as the judge. So they hand it to their mothers and say, can you read this? Can you understand it? Is there anything you don't understand? And that's just a good way for them to, share their information and make sure everybody understands it. So it's very clear and concise. So common errors to avoid when you're going through the process, just little things that kind of stick out to me that drive me absolutely bonkers when I'm reading a paper. I already talked about, the length. Just be careful on the length of the papers. But other common errors are, when you're talking about tables and graphs, you need descriptions with them. It doesn't have to be long descriptions. It just has to be something describing it so that you completely understand, what you're seeing there. You shouldn't have a table just thrown in there without explaining what's in the table, or you shouldn't have a graph with nothing explaining it. They should be titled, they should be explained. So be careful with that. And speaking of graphs, always label your axes in the context of the problem. So that labeling an axis doesn't mean label one X, one Y. These are real world situations. So your axes should be labeled in the context of that real world situation. So be clear about that. Always define your variables. If you're going to use the variables, don't say, well, X is this and Y is this. Remember, it should be described in the context of the problem. So always define your variables. Be clear and neat with respect to how you type out your work. There are many options that you can use, and I'll talk about those briefly when I go through the technology portion. But there are so many errors that students make where when they're using exponents, they use the caret key. That's a red flag there for us grading that. You don't have to use carets anymore to say x squared. Be careful with, when you're using chi. Chi is not just an X. There's a specific symbol for chi, so be careful with that. And it's not an uppercase X. It's a symbol. There's a symbol for the chi, but it's a lowercase symbol, so be careful with that. When you are using scientific notation, don't use the letter E. It's times 10 to a certain exponent. So these are things for notation-wise that kind of pop up regularly. With respect to reflections are always good in the conclusion, but they're not, you don't have to restrict them to the conclusion. You can reflect throughout the paper, and that adds to the depth of the paper as well. So you can reflect as you do things over and over again. There's nothing wrong with just reflecting in the end, but it's always good to reflect throughout. Talking about your math in the opening, that's always good to know what you're going to be doing. You don't have to be super specific and detailed about every math process, but talking about the math and how you're going to use it, that is very key. It helps the reader, look forward to something and expect something. You don't like to be surprised in the paper because you don't like to read something 3 pages in and then have to go back and say, oh, was this mentioned before? So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else common error-wise? Oh, pictures. We're going to talk about, what you should do with respect to your technology, but really you should not. And I love this in the video series. I have this wonderful worksheet about what is for common errors. What is a good representation and what is a bad representation? And the students, it's a worksheet, and they get to kind of fill out and talk about what makes it good, what makes it bad, what can be improved upon it. And it's included with this webinar video. So if you look at the materials that are with it, you'll see a zip drive, and that's part of it. So I included that with you so you can kind of access that to help you out. But what frustrates me is when a student takes a picture of their calculator. Okay, that's frustrating because there are so many ways that you can, either through some software for free on the computer or through TI software that's also free if you have the calculator, you can just easily transfer the picture from the screen onto your paper. You don't need to take your cell phone and take a picture of it. And so that makes it it shows pride in your work that you're doing something that makes it look the best. And when you take pictures with your phone, sometimes you get a glare, sometimes you get wavy screens, and it just doesn't look good, professional, that sort of thing. So just watch out for that. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then I think that's it for the common errors for now. And then the final checklist, when you hand this in to your teacher, before you hand it into the teacher, in my video series, I also have a checklist for you that you could just go down and check the boxes. Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I have someone else read it? Is it formatted correctly? If I have a table, do I have the title of the table on the previous page and then the table on the next page? I don't know why students do that, but it happens more often than not. Does it, is everything, are your widths of your tables, like the column widths, are they good and accurate? So there's a lot of things that you can go through on this checklist. Is everything cited? That sort of thing. That's kind of a nice tool. So I would check that out if you have that, if you're on MyIB and go to the digital content. But anyways, so let's get to the TI stuff. In my classroom, we are Nspire users, so I love everything the Nspire can do. I still have a lot of students that rely heavily on the 84. because although I use the Nspires, my school is more of an 84 user, which is fine because the 84 is a really good calculator, and they've updated it, made it a color screen, and so it actually transfers nicely onto the IA if you want to use it. But what can TI do to help you in writing your paper? So graph and table screenshots using one of several TI Connect software choices. So if you own a calculator, either the 84 CE, which is right here on the screen, or if you look at the Nspire, you have the availability for free to transfer those images onto your paper. Very easy. And let me show you real quick how to access that. So if you go to education.ti.com, all right, all you have to do is go to the downloads, all right, and then you'll notice that we are looking at to do all software and updates. Okay, if we click on that, and it's going a little slow, so I apologize. All right, so here is basically everything that we have here, but I don't think I want that. No, that wasn't it. I apologize. I need to go to products and then computer software. That's where we need to go. Okay, and so what you notice here on this screen, down here is all the Connect software that you can get for free. Okay, so if you have an 84, you can basically just click on the 84 Connect, and let me show you what that looks like once you have it. So here's my TI Connect for the CE. So basically, if I open that up, very simple. So I download that on my computer, and once it's open, you basically connect your calculator just with a USB cable. It'll show up right here on the screen. You click on it, and whatever is on your screen, you could take a screenshot of and then transfer it to your document. It's as simple as cutting and pasting. Very easy, which I love. And then you could do the same thing. They just added this, which I love, 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 with the Nspire. So if you have the TI-Nspire CX2, we have that Connect. All right, so you go right to this page. It says launch now. And again, it'll ask you to connect a calculator. Once it's connected, you just say, take a screenshot, boom, cut and paste. Very easy, very simple. And it's a nice clear shot. You basically get to take, this picture, okay, what's on your screen, and transfer it right to your document. You don't have any wavy lines. You don't have reflections because you used your phone. It's not thicker on top and wider on the bottom because you don't get the angle right. It's just that screenshot. So it's very easy. Now, what if you don't have one of those two types of calculators? Well, there are some options for you on the TI website. Okay, so we can basically, if we go back to the software, you can purchase, calculator software from TI, that emulates the Nspire or the 84. Now, there is a cost for that, but again, it's minimal cost. And, if you have, get one or two for the classroom, students can then use it together. So it's minimal cost for everybody. So these are just options for you that just make things look nice, clean, and crisp. And I love, since I'm an Nspire user, I love those screenshots of the Nspire. It looks good. And you have the ability, when you're using graphs, to manipulate the X and Y axis, so you can change the names of those, you can edit those. For the 84, unfortunately, you have to, once you transfer it onto your paper, you're going to have to use like a text box, that sort of thing, to add in whatever the names are for that. So that adds an extra step, but still good, still looks good and appropriate there for that. So I love that. And now what can those calculators do for us? Well, we have the ability to, model data. So when you take your calculator, if you have an Nspire, okay, and all you have to do is, put data in your list and spreadsheet, and then all you have to do then is add a data and statistics page, and you'll get the data right here. It'll show up, and you get to to have those data points on there. It looks really nice, looks really clean. All right, you can do that also on your 84. You can go to, the stat edit screen, fill up your data here, and then go turn on your stat plots right here. Mine are off right now. So if I turn them on, okay, very simple, turn it on, and then go to my graph. This is the graph that I had before. So I can do my, zoom stat, which is number 9. There's my data, so I can do that too as well. So and then you can just transfer this onto your paper, very easy, and then model the data. So you can also use some regressions. So if you go to your stat and then calc, you can do your linear regression, quadratic regression, and this also can be done on the Nspire as well. So there's many options to model data, which I really love on the TI calculators. You can also cut and paste equations from your screen. So if you're using, for your documents, if you're typing them in Google Docs, or if you have Microsoft, you can transfer easily those equations from your calculator to your paper just by, again, doing screenshots and cutting and pasting. Very minimal effort. You can do it within seconds or minutes to do it. So it doesn't take that much effort to do. And then you have so many other things that you can do with the calculators. With the Nspire, any page that you add, if I'm just doing a regular calculator page, we got so much to do with algebra and with calculus and with probability and with statistics. We have so many menu options available to you and your students. That's on the Nspire, but with the 84, we also have, under the math key, we have so many things that we can do with respect to basic algebra, with calculus, with numbers, and complex numbers, probability. All that stuff is there for you, and you can do it by hand, or if you have the software available, to use. So a lot of things you can do. I just love the calculators, and they are so useful. So that brings up the question, what if you don't have TI software or TI handhelds to use? And, yes, there are other options out there, that are free. You can use Desmos, GeoGebra, GraphFree. Those are all viable options, but, all my students either use Microsoft or Google Sheets to type up their papers. And I just think that the Nspire or the 84 are just super options to use. So if you have that availability, so if you have the handheld, if you have a cable that you can connect to a computer, you can transfer those files for free, and you don't need the software. You don't have to buy the software. If you don't have the handhelds, then obviously, you can purchase the software for a minimal cost. In that, anywhere from $5 to $20 range, I think you can get that pretty available. I'm not sure on those numbers, but it's not too expensive for that. But anyways, that is what we have for the IAs. Okay, I did have a few questions that kind of popped up through this, and I kind of answered some of those questions. As a teacher, as an IB teacher, you're allowed to give feedback and comments, once on an overall paper. So use that wisely. Don't do it too early. You can definitely answer questions throughout, but the students have the ability to ask many people. They can ask multiple friends or teachers or parents, so have them reach out to others and kind of do that. They asked about the TI Connect software. Yes, that is free. They asked if it's free, so definitely go to, I showed you where it was on the TI website. Is there a software version of the 84 and the Nspire? Yes, there is. There is a cost to that. Now, if a student has purchased an Nspire calculator, especially, hopefully they get the newest one, the CX2, then free software comes with it. So keep that in mind. I know I have students who are unfamiliar with that, and I have to say, please don't throw away the little pamphlet that comes with it, because it has a license in it for free software, or not free software. You purchase the calculator, so you also purchase the software, but it's included, so don't throw that away. But you can purchase, And if you also go through third-party vendors, you can also purchase software from them as well. But yes, you can get that software. Can we print and distribute samples? So I mentioned this earlier that some IB coordinators say that, IB doesn't want you to, share the samples with students. But as I mentioned before, I think that's counterintuitive. So I never let students take them home. I keep them in my classroom, and if students come in, they're allowed to read them, but they never take them with them. But I just like to have them there available for students. So that's my opinion on it, and I know a lot of IB math teachers do the same thing as I do. Is it okay to use data and cite it for your paper if you get it from the internet? And yes, of course. I've written or read many papers that students get information from different sites. As long as they cite their information, yes, they can use that. Can a student work on topics used by students who have used it somewhere else? Of course. I mean, yes, there are an infinite amount of topics, but the same topics get repeated over and over again, and that is definitely okay. So don't worry if your students kind of see a topic that they like, so they want to do their own spin on it, that's fine. What I would try to avoid as a teacher is if you have big classes or multiple classes, I wouldn't let students do the same topic within those classes. If I have 30 students, I'm expecting 30 unique topics. That might be a little tough, or they might think it's a little tough, but I don't let that happen. Now, from year to year, if they repeat topics, that's fine, but I just kind of tend to avoid that there. But that's all the questions that kind of popped up to me. So, having said that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and, ask Ruth if she has anything to add or say with what we just accomplished there.
Thanks so much, Dan. What a lot of great information and great questions through the chat. So great participation from the viewers tonight. Dan had posted his email address, so you can, when you think of something later, just shoot out a question to him or comments to share. Thank you. If you need a certificate of attendance for tonight's webinar or viewing the recording, here is the link. You just type in the short URL and it'll take you to a place where you can customize your certificate of attendance. That's it for me, Dan.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thanks for listening, and hope to see you at our next webinar. Take care and talk to you soon.